I'm a hair mineral analysis expert. I have a background in functional medicine, and I educate people using HTMA testing to maximize health, erase debilitating symptoms, and gain energy. I'm a multi-time kettlebell sport world champion, and I'm constantly searching for high-performance pros from all over the world to bring you this human optimization podcast. My name is Lisa Pitel-Killah. Welcome everybody to a brand new episode of the Human Optimization Podcast. And in this episode, I have Nathalie Niddam here with me. She is a self-proclaimed science geek with a passion for human health, as am I. Nat is a certified holistic nutritionist, an epigenetic coach, and a member of the first graduating class of the Bulletproof Training Institute. And we're going to hear lots about that. In her teens, she fought with ongoing health and digestive issues. She learned many years later to tap into her body's own healing and repair mechanisms, and now wants to share her knowledge to help others take control of their health. Nathalie's unique method blends an array of human performance fields like neuroscience, personalized nutrition, nutraceuticals, biohacking, ancestral health, and resilience training. She works with clients one-on-one and in small groups to tap into each person's unique genetic code to personalize supplementation, nutrition, and lifestyle in order to deliver results that last for a lifetime. Welcome, Nathalie.
Thank you. Wow, that was like my whole bio. I haven't heard it read out loud in a long time.
I love it. Well, there's so much to it, right? And so we're going to dive into a lot of that today. And I really, really want to be able to talk about a lot of the things that you do, because I really believe that it's truly so helpful for individuals to be able to tap into their potential and take back their health if they're having issues. So tell us a little bit about how you got into the health and wellness field. Obviously you had some issues, in your teens and things like that. Tell us all about that and how you got where you are now.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a winding road, as I think it is for a lot of us. Definitely, my health issues when I was a kid they weren't particularly serious, but it's a classic kind of pattern that you'll see with babies that are born by C-section. They're not breastfed, their immune system, their microbiome gets compromised, their immune system's not great. I ended up contracting a bunch of different, I got pneumonia, I got strep throat, 20 times. So multiple repeated courses of antibiotics as I grew up, which, as you can imagine, left my system pretty compromised. But it took me a long time to get into what I do today, except that what I studied in university was human physiology. And I loved it. And yet I got distracted and ended up leaving university and deciding and just tapping into this other skill of mine, which is my skill of what I call my skill of gab. And I ended up in sales. I ended up in the publishing and advertising world for years. But I was also a fitness instructor. And so being a fitness instructor really kind of helped me to keep my hand in science and working with people. And I was always kind of digging into nutrition and different ways of eating. And I always really had this inherent belief that the body has an ability to heal itself. And then and one day I woke up and, probably I'm guessing now over 10 years ago now, and said, I'm going back to school. And so I went back to school. I became a nutritionist. And then a couple of years after that, I decided, telling people what to eat is awesome, except that they don't do it.
That's so true.
I kind of caught this bug of biohacking, and I was following Dave Asprey of the Bulletproof thing. Anyway, he announced and this is kind of how I do things. I decided I was going to go back to school, and within a week I was registered at the Institute of Holistic Nutrition. I decided, I needed something else. And Dave Asprey announced, we're launching a certification course. And I was like, 2 days later, I was registered in that. And it was interesting because as soon as I registered, I kind of thought, oh, geez, what did I just do? Did I just pay thousands of dollars to learn about the bulletproof diet? Even then, I've always been a person that believed that people are very different and that what works for one person is not going to work for the next person. Absolutely. And so, I refer to myself as diet agnostic. That, I'm a little more challenged on the vegan side. I feel that it takes a lot of work to do vegan well, and it doesn't work for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I'm a little less comfortable with that one.
Yeah.
But otherwise, on my spectrum, I'm total agnostic. Anyway, I did the Bulletproof training course, which was 10 months. It was incredibly intense because they've never offered it before. They're like, oh yeah, it'll be a couple hours a week. You'll be fine. It was 10 hours a week, easy.
Oh my gosh. Oh,
But
wow.
what's amazing about it is that it really delved into what it means to coach people and getting into the psychology of change, getting into the psychology of happiness, getting into resilience training and meditation. There was like an 8-week mindfulness course embedded in that training. So it really broadened my horizons in a really big way. And so I think, it made me a lot better at what I do. And then as I'm, traveling along, working on this whole idea of how unique every single person is, of course, I stumble upon genetics and epigenetics, started taking courses in that. Then I did a certification course a couple of years ago. And so now I'm an epigenetic coach. And along that road, I was at a conference. And the other thing that hasn't popped up on my bio yet, I'm not sure where to put it, and yet it's becoming a big part of how I practice with my clients, is I sat in on the lecture where some guy was talking about these things called peptides. And, you get this guy standing up there, he's got a great tan. He goes, and as a matter of fact, if you think I've been sitting in the sun, you are so wrong, because this is the result of using this peptide called melanotan 2. And peptides can do these amazing things. They can help the body to heal and increase growth hormone and this. And I was like gobsmacked. Right?
Wow. Yeah.
And so and at first I put my hands up. I'm like, no more shiny new things. I talk about myself as having shiny object syndrome. I'm always like going down another rabbit hole. And yeah, I've now decided it's not shiny object syndrome. It is a lifelong, it is the defining feature of a lifelong learner, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. I'm sure this has happened to you.
I'm exactly the same. At some points, you almost think it's like a kid with a toy box that's overflowing. You can't get everything in the box anymore. But you eventually take some of the older things out that you may not use as much anymore to make room for the new ones. And it's a continual kind of lifelong learning. And I'm on the same work. I feel like health, you have to evolve. So many things evolve. There's so much new information. There's so many things, right? And I think we just have to kind of roll with the times and what's happening and keep learning, because that's the key. So
well, and I think anybody involved in human health, that's the bottom line. No matter where you are on the continuum, whether you're a medical doctor or a nutritionist or a health coach, whatever it is, nobody has all the answers. You have to be willing to re-examine what you think you know at the drop of a study or a couple of studies. And re-examine and rejig, or even when you're working with a client, you'll learn new things. So anyway, this peptide thing really turned into something, because I was so fascinated by peptides. I sought out people who knew about them. I started a Facebook community, which has now grown to like over 7,000.
Yeah.
In a little over a year, right? Just amazing. Organically. Amazing. Meanwhile, I'd in the past tried to build a Facebook community running Facebook ads. It cost me thousands of dollars to get 400 people. Here, I put up a title and boom, it's like people are flowing in. And then I ended up starting a podcast of my own, which you will be on one day.
I'm excited about that. That would be so fun. Yeah.
So anyway, so that's a very long.
No, that, and you know what, you're obviously very passionate about it. I feel like a lot of us who are in kind of that health and wellness in these specific areas, and that's why we're there, right? Because we're so passionate. And so it sounds like kind of one of the biggest, like what is one of the biggest or a few of the biggest takeaways just from some of the training you've done that you really dive into in your practice? It sounds like the mindset was a big part of that, right?
Yeah, I would say for sure that mindfulness, meditation, like that whole inner work, that whole dialogue of helping people to connect with why they want to change. And because, we tend to be our own worst enemies, and there's
100%.
Right. And there's no shortage of information out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
The problem is there's too much information out there.
Well,
And
Yeah, and you can always find it conflicting. If you find one study that says one thing, there's always something that says no, yes, yes, and no, right? So there's a lot, there's tons to delve
Yeah.
through. Yeah.
So I have to say that the mindfulness work, the meditation, the connection to self, helping people to kind of move through those I don't want to call them blocks, but just those hurdles that they, whatever those walls or whatever the stories are that they are telling themselves, right? I'm not good at this. I can't do that. I have no willpower. And then bringing in the science, so the genetic piece, because the genetics helps someone to understand, for example, they might carry, there's a gene called, I think it's the PPARGC1A gene, but we call it the cookie jar gene.
Yeah.
And it's a gene that when you have a particular variant of it, those people, and I'm actually one of those people, when they start eating sugar, it literally flips a switch in their brain and they can't stop. And so these are people who walk around talking about, I have no willpower. Oh, me? None. I got no willpower. And you know what? When you explain to someone, it's actually not willpower. Mm-hmm. It's actually kind of like the way you're programmed. You're programmed for survival. This would have been a really good survival mechanism at some point, right? Mm-hmm. Not so much now when we're at the buffet of endless food.
Yeah, exactly.
But we have to, as us people, the cookie jar gene people, we need to know that the trick for us is not to have that stuff in the house. It's to not, just don't have the first cookie.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, make a decision that and if you really want a cookie, go somewhere, buy 2 cookies or 1 cookie. Don't buy the bag.
So, because then they're not at home. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, so the genetics piece, I think, and epigenetics, and now with, and then the other thing I think is very powerful with clients is the whole notion of self-quantification. So I currently, because I'm testing one, I have 2 wearable devices on right now.
Okay,
I have an Aura ring, which measures sleep and heart rate variability. And I'm wearing the new BioStrap, which I'm actually really liking. So introducing people to this idea of wearable technology, not so that they can become obsessed with every little metric, but so that they can start to really see what is the effect of their actions on their physiology, so that they can start to see, wow, so when I drink, before bed, when I have those few glasses of wine, I think I'm sleeping, but my body is actually not in a state where it's able to restore itself. Right. Or a late meal is going to keep you out of that deep sleep phase, so that your body's not restoring. So really helping people to draw lines between their actions and what it means to their physiology.
Yeah. And quantifying it, right? It's scientific data. And I think quantification is something that goes a long way with regards to people making sustainable and maintainable changes, right? When they're thinking about lifestyle.
That's exactly right. And I think the whole sustainable change is the key. It's explaining to people that, and I know it's mostly, I'm sure it's the same with you. When we coach people, we're not coaching them so that they change their behavior for 3 months and so that they can go back to where they were.
Exactly.
Like people, I'm very clear with people when I take them on as clients is, you are taking on a lifestyle change here. You have to be willing and open to change so that your way of being, and you will look back and be amazed at all the new things that you're doing. And we will do them one at a time so that they integrate. We'll create, we'll do our best to accommodate your physiology. But let's be clear, there is no magic wand that's going to make it okay to drink a bottle of wine every night and have, a bag of cookies for breakfast.
Yeah. And your burgers or whatever. Yeah. Or
whatever
pizza.
Your thing is.
Whatever
that thing is, we can't make it okay. We can build resilience into your body, right? We can help to build resilience into your system so that you can on occasion, or you can within certain defined moments, like enjoy a glass of wine or have a piece of cake. Like, for goodness sake, like it's your birthday. Yeah, have a piece of cake. Why the heck not? It's that, but that's the whole point. The whole point of being good is so that you can then do what the hell you want when you need to.
Exactly. Yeah, no, 100%. And so what are some of the biggest struggles when you're working with a client? What are some of the biggest struggles you see, or even one that they have maybe some issues overcoming? What's one of those things that kind of pops out that's very maybe consistent?
I think it really, it depends on the client.
Mm-hmm.
I think very often people don't trust their ability to change.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They think that because they've been a certain way all their lives, that this is the way they are. Like, this is the way
it defines them.
And they exactly. And so helping them to understand that they are capable of change, that anything can be changed, that it's their drive, it's their desire. And I think the biggest key to that is helping them to understand why they're here in the first place and what's the outcome they're looking for. It's never about eating more carrots.
Yeah.
Why is it important to you to be healthy or to get rid of pain or whatever the case may be, right? And so is it because you envision yourself in your 70s, 80s, and 90s traveling the world, or playing with your grandkids, or taking on a new career? Like, we live in an age now where being in your 60s and 70s and 80s does not preclude you from being like vibrant and active and even working. Like, I have no desire to retire personally.
Yeah.
I may change the way that I work down the road, but to me, like, retirement sounds like that sounds like a really bad idea. It sounds boring, right? I mean,
that's right. What do we do?
Well, I mean, I want to be able to travel. I mean, of course I want to be able to do other things, but at the same time, like, I love what I do. It feeds me. So
exactly. Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, it's funny because even on my kettlebell team, I have four ladies now. They're all in their mid 60s. And they do high intensity training. They compete. They travel all over. They've been to the world championships as veterans. Like, they're just doing it. And I love it. It motivates me. It's inspirational because they come and give it their all, each time that they come and train. And that's pretty incredible. I feel like we're anywhere from 10 to 20 years younger than what the actual number, kind of looks like nowadays. And so I want to dive a little bit into peptides, because I am really interested in hearing all about it. Like the suntan thing, I was like, what? Tell me more about that. So, I mean, tell us about peptides. Like, what are they really? And how can we use them with individuals? What do they do? What do they help them with? Obviously, there's a lot of different things. Like you mentioned, wound healing, right? Slowing the aging process. There's a lot of other things that can be involved with that. Let's talk about it.
So, it's a good question. So peptides they're basically small proteins, right? So a protein is a compound that's made up of a chain of amino acids. Amino acids are the building blocks of protein. A peptide, by definition, and it depends who you talk to, typically it's considered a peptide if it's 50 amino acids long or less. Some of these peptides that we are talking about are 2 amino acids or 3 amino acids. Like, it's really interesting that some of the most powerful peptides are the tiniest little molecules you can imagine. What's amazing, there's about 7,000 peptides that have been identified. They all naturally occur in the human body. But what's happened is that they've been studied, or some of them have been studied, and they are synthesized in labs and reintroduced into the body. The tricky thing about peptides is that most of them have to be injected subcutaneously. So that means it's an injection like a diabetic might do with insulin, which, by the way, is a peptide, interestingly enough.
Oh, that is interesting.
Right? So people don't realize, we have peptides in our world already. It's nothing new, but what's cool, because they are native to the body, when you reintroduce them, they act essentially almost as signaling molecules.
Right.
Many of them do. or they will bind to receptors which actually is a function also of a signaling molecule. They might bind to certain receptors. There are, so we've got peptides. There's a class of peptides called growth hormone secretagogues. And so you get all these people running around saying, oh, our growth hormone naturally declines as we age. Right. Which impacts our ability to recover. It impacts our skin. It impacts all these every function in the human body, really. So you can get exogenous growth hormones, so synthetic growth hormones synthesized in a lab, and you re-inject it back, which is tricky. Number one, it's super expensive. Number two, it's hard to get your hands on. And number three, when you introduce synthetic growth hormone into the body, you run the risk of downregulating even more your own production or numbing the receptors of growth hormone, which is a problem, right? Yeah. That can be managed to a point if you have a very skilled physician working with you who's able to toggle the dose and make sure. But guess what? We've got these growth hormone secretagogues that will signal the brain to upregulate your own production of growth hormone.
Oh, that's amazing.
Right? Yeah. So how cool is that? So now you're making your own growth hormone, and you've got GHRHs, GHRPs. So you've got these different compounds that one of them will signal the hypothalamus. The other one might signal the pituitary gland so the hypothalamus tells the pituitary gland, make more growth hormone. Yeah. The pituitary gland then has to release it. We also have compounds that act as ghrelin agonists, because ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone, actually also stimulates growth hormone release. So you get all these, it's a very elegant kind of way of kind of coaxing the body into doing more of what you want it to do, that it may not be doing as well as it used to. Yeah. You've got a whole class of peptides that we would call repair peptides. And so these are for people who are very physically active and who there's a lot of wear and tear on joints, muscles, and ligaments. These are peptides that can help with healing and recovery. Yeah. You've got peptides that might help with sleep. You've got other peptides that are magical for gastrointestinal healing. Peptides that help with the immune system. So peptides that would be extracts that would have been originally from the thymus gland. So our thymus gland, which is our center really of immunity, involutes as we age. It becomes less and less functional, and to the point where it almost becomes nothing after, I think, by our 50s or so, or 60s. So thymosin alpha-1, thymosin beta-4, these are two thymus peptides that help thymosin alpha-1 in particular helps to modulate the immune system.
Interesting.
And so it can help to potentiate, it can help to make vaccines more effective. When you're giving a vaccination to an elderly person, for example, there's a couple of studies have come out where they've seen that thymosin alpha-1 can actually help that vaccine be more effective in an elderly person whose immune system might not be in condition to mount an appropriate response to the vaccine so that you become immune.
Right.
So anyway, so honestly, I could keep going, but you get the idea. There's a lot of
well, and I mean, so a lot of people are just coming upon this, right? Like this is a whole new breakthrough to biohacking that's kind of coming about, and I know that being able to manipulate a little bit inside the body to be able to support it to do its own job just at a younger, right, as if we were at a younger age, that's a really incredible breakthrough with technology like that, which is pretty incredible. And so some of the results, I mean, even with gastrointestinal, like, I mean, I feel like that would be such a powerful one, because so many people, because of the processed foods, usually as we overindulge in alcohol, things like that, your gut is a mess a lot of times, right? And I know that a lot of people, even many clients that I've worked with, have spent years and still have ongoing issues. And so, I mean, I guess with that, is that something where, they would use it continuously? Like, how would you use it in that type of situation? Because that's a really interesting one. I think for a lot of people with regards to intestinal health.
For sure. So one thing I want to say about peptides, though, is that they're not mainstream just yet.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of them, a few of them have been now classified as drugs by the FDA. I don't know that any in Canada are yet.
Okay.
So they're theoretically, not theoretically, they're from a practical perspective, they are still classified as research chemicals. So I want people to really understand that. I think that it's important. In the US, there are a number of compounding pharmacies that make peptides and serve and provide them to this new kind of class of doctors called functional medicine doctors, who will use them in their practice. It's really an evolving field. I've spoken to a number of doctors now, and I would say that it's clear that peptides will revolutionize medicine in the next 5 to 10 years.
Amazing.
They're absolutely going to make a huge impact, but you know, there's a lot of resistance, obviously.
Of course.
And so one thing I want to say to people, because I'm sure that, you know, the people listening to this podcast are
going,
because podcast, you are a biohacker in some way, shape,
of course.
If you find yourself as not, you are. And so understand that you have to know where your peptides are coming from. There's a lot of crap on the market. There's a lot of third-party vendors that are just remarketing product, not to denigrate China, because China can make some really good stuff. There are, you know, obviously manufacturers in China that can make fantastic product, but there's a lot of shysters out there. So you have to be very confident. You know, these are powerful compounds, purity counts, and concentration counts, like all these things. So having said that, I just wanted to make sure people understand this.
And I'm glad you did, because that's a really good point. And I think people need to realize that with everything, right? Even your vitamins, your minerals, like all, it's the same across the board, because there's different levels of ingredients and purity.
Exactly. So, but to answer your question about GI healing, so this is where the word magic comes up every once in a while, because there's this one peptide called BPC, like Barry, Billy, Pollyanna, Charlie.
Love it.
157. That is, it's a gastric peptide. So it is naturally occurring in our gastric juice. But it is a peptide that I have seen in the matter of 2 weeks, in some cases, resolve heartburn that people have been dealing with for years.
Wow.
It's a peptide that can help with ulcers. It's a peptide that can literally, there are practitioners who talk about it having reversed ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease. It heals, it has the ability to heal the digestive tract from the mouth to the anus. There are studies in rats where it showed where it healed anal fissures. Wow. It is incredibly powerful, but the coolest thing about BPC 157, if it could be even cooler.
I was going to say, how can it be even cooler? But I'm ready. Tell me.
So somebody's using it because they have heartburn or gastritis, whatever the case may be, and they come to you after 2 or 3 weeks and they go, you know, I've had this knee injury for the longest time, and is it possible that my knee doesn't hurt anymore? And you're like, yeah, I kind of was going to mention that, but I didn't, because it also is very powerful for musculoskeletal injuries. It's also very powerful in the brain and for the nervous system. So I call it the blue Ford of the Model T Ford of peptides, because and I mean, to be fair, many peptides have what we call pleiotropic effects. They affect all over the body. But BPC 157 remains like an incredibly powerful tool in the toolkit. The only caveat I would say is I'm starting to hear a little bit, there seems to be a small subset of people that don't respond well to BPC 157.
Well, I
like they feel that it imbalances them, like from their dopamine or serotonin. And that's, you know, even 6 months ago, I would have said, oh yeah, that's not that big a deal. But there's a growing number. I'm starting to see, and it's looking like maybe 10% of people, like, and we don't know, are these people who have some kind of underlying imbalance that somehow
is contributing to that?
Contributing to this? It's very hard to know. I've learned a long time ago not to dismiss anything ever out of hand in this field.
Yeah.
So it's something that I think people need to be aware of.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons why I think, and it's a mistake that people make, you get people that are very enthusiastic, they're so excited, and they go in really hard with a peptide instead of starting at a very low dose. And it's like you would do with a new supplement, right? I'm sure with your compounded supplements, you start low.
Oh, absolutely. You start with a quarter dose or an eighth of a pinch. Yeah, right. Whatever it takes, and slowly, because the body is going to change. Right. Everything that we're doing is therapeutic for the body to make its own changes. And sometimes there's going to be reactions that come along with those changes, and we can monitor and be able to control those reactions by letting the body get used to what is going to be coming about and be able to have the time to deal with it rather than being shocked and then dealing with it, which is where those Herxing reactions come from, right?
It's like thymosin alpha-1, right? Which is this incredible immune peptide. Like I've had my parents using TA1 all year now.
Amazing.
They live in Florida.
Yeah.
They're in their 80s. They work in retail. They've been using thymosin alpha-1 all year because, you know, if we can keep their immune system balanced and healthy, then they stand a much better chance of a better outcome should they come across any nefarious kind of viruses that might be floating around.
Exactly.
Right? But the first time I used TA1, I went in with a full dose right out of the gate, and it made me sick. I thought I was having a flu. So for me, TA1, I had to build up very slowly, because imagine if your Th1 or Th2 arm of your immune system is overrepresented, you introduce this thing, all of a sudden you get like a heave-ho, like you get a complete seesaw effect. Whereas if you go slowly, you allow the body to find a new state of homeostasis, a new place of balance, where without you riding this ridiculous roller coaster ride.
You're right. I couldn't agree with you more on anything but that, because, and it is true, and it's our own faults. And it's because we're so excited. We want the change to happen. It's like, oh my God, I can't wait to see what this is going to do for me. Right. And we're just so excited. And that's normally what it's from. It's just that build up, that excitement of what's next. And I'm ready, you know, and I feel like a lot of us go through that, especially us as health practitioners. Sometimes we don't even listen to our own advice. It's like, oh,
and anybody who's done CrossFit or worked with kettlebells has that kind of hard ass attitude. It's kind of like, my hands ripped, no problem. Give me a band.
Give me some tape. It's fine. I'll keep going.
It'll be fine. Actually, the one other class of peptides I didn't mention that I think is really exciting are the anti-aging peptides.
I want to hear about those.
Yeah, so there's I'm actually doing a second round of one in particular right now, and they tend to fall in the bioregulator category. And the anti-aging peptides literally seem to be able to help the body to reset. For example, this one peptide called the Pitel-Killah, which was extensively studied by Dr. Kabat-Zinn. Kabat-Zinn in Russia. He did a couple of big human studies on elderly populations. One was 6 years long, the other one was 12 years long. And it literally it acts on the pineal gland, and it resets your circadian rhythm. It upregulates production of melatonin, which we make less melatonin as we age, which works against us in many different ways. So it naturally upregulates melatonin again. It can help with bone density over time. It will help with the immune system as well over time. So the trick with something like a Pitel-Killah, I notice it in my sleep metrics when I use it. This is my second round. But a lot of these benefits you're not going to see until you've used it for a few years, and it depends on the person's age and stage and all different things. But then so now you've got these kind of anti-aging peptides. Another one called GHK, which GHK is called the copper peptide because it's GHK-Cu being the copper molecule. And a lot of people are big on GHK because it's incredible for skin and skin rejuvenation. But what's even more cool about GHK is that it acts on your DNA, and it flips, at last count, I think it was over 4,000 genes in your DNA in a positive way. So I don't actually think we know a half of what it does, but it's involved in healing. It's involved in 1,000 different things in the human body in the background.
That's amazing. And so that brings me back, because I do want to touch on, before we go here, a little bit about the epigenetics, because I mean, this is an emerging thing as well, right? Like, a lot of people haven't heard about it. They don't really understand it. And I get, it hurts me inside to think that people think that their destiny is in their genes. They don't realize how many things are out there for them for that not to be the case. So let's touch a little bit on that and kind of,
I think one of the most powerful memes, if you will, that I've heard recently or over the last couple of years is your genes load the gun, but your environment is what pulls the trigger. So understand.
That's a good one. I like that one. Yeah.
Isn't that good?
I'll use that again for sure. I won't forget that one.
And it's not mine. I wish it was, but it's not mine. So basically what that means is, let's say we run your genomic profile and it tells us that you have a higher, and here's the first thing to understand about genomics. They are not predictive. Just because you carry, and it's all tied into the same story. Just because you carry a risk of whatever the case may be, does not mean it's expressing in your body. And so here's the next biggest bomb I think people really need to get their heads around, is that your body has multiple redundant pathways to do the exact same thing. And we don't know them all. So of the pathways that we know, we will look at the genes and we might say, oh, you know what, Betty, you have your hunger must be way out of control, because these satiety signal, these genes that regulate satiety are awful. Like you must be hungry all the time. And Betty's going to look at you and go, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm fine. Yeah. And number one, Betty may have learned how to adapt to this ages ago. Earlier in her life, or there may be other genes and other pathways at play that we don't know about. So one of the big problems with genomic testing right now is that people are running out, they're buying these tests, they're getting them, they look at them and they're like, holy shit, I'm going to have a heart attack, I'm going to become diabetic, and blah, 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 right? And I'm developing Alzheimer's. I'm doomed. And the truth is, you have to be able to put it in context, first of all, with your current state of health. What are your labs? What's your lifestyle? And what is actually showing up for you right now? What's helpful here is if we understand that you have a bunch of genes that maybe predispose you to a higher risk of type 2 diabetes. So now what we're going to talk about are, what are the lifestyle interventions we can bring into play, like regular exercise, like eating a certain way, like making sure that you're sleeping so that your blood sugar is not dysregulated the next day because your cortisol is sky high. Like, what are all the different lifestyle, diet, exercise, all the things that we can teach you to do so that thing, it never lights up. That switch never gets flipped. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing that people need to take away from genomic testing is that idea that understanding what your blueprint is gives you the power to have a much better outcome down the road. We can't say 100%, but we can go a long way, certainly with a lot of these different issues. And having someone sitting across from you to help you put this into context and to help you understand, like there's supplements that can help. There are peptides that can help. There's, you know better than anybody, like lifting heavy weights is going to help you to manage your glucose better. It's going to upregulate your natural testosterone production. Like all of these things can be impacted by our lifestyle. And in many ways, I think in the best case scenario, what genomics does is it empowers people because it gives them the knowledge and the motivation to say, okay, I'm taking control because I'm not going down that road.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. And I think one of the biggest mistakes people can make, and what you pointed out, was saying, oh, I'm destined to, whether it's a heart attack or whatever the case might be. And as soon as your mind gives that power, right? And now we're feeding that's going to happen, right? Exactly. And that's not the right way to deal with things. And I think that's why it's really important for people, if they're going to go down that road with the testing, to be able to work with someone who is there to guide them and help them make the right decisions, and be able to use that as a blueprint to live better. And so that leads us into, okay, first of all, you have a massive Facebook groups. I am going to put the link in the bio so everybody knows. And yeah, and I mean, so tell us a little bit about kind of what goes on in the group, and how all that works, how people, like, what kind of information and what's available in the group.
Yeah, so the group is called, it's actually, I kept the name constant across all my different platforms now.
That's
so that
perfect.
I can keep it straight myself.
Yeah. Well, then people can always find you no matter what platform they're on.
And it's funny because it's a bit of a cheesy name, and I came up with
it
on the drop I had, but it works. So the name of the group is called Biohacking Superhuman Performance. And I think the real hook is the 3 words after, which is peptides, nutrition, genetics. And I recreated that group so people know it exists on Facebook, but because Facebook is becoming an increasingly challenging platform to use, and is somewhat autocratic, and I could get shut down any minute just because me or one of the members.
There's many of us that we're in the same boat with health groups. Yeah.
So I've started a shadow group on another platform called MeWe. So if anybody's interested, the thing with MeWe is that I don't have the bandwidth to be active in both groups. So MeWe is really kind of a holding place in case something happens to the Facebook group. So the big group is Biohacking Superhuman Performance, which is the same name actually as the podcast, where I try to interview as many people as possible around peptides. Like, I don't only talk about peptides, but definitely there's a lot of peptide episodes there. But the group, it's a really neat community. I mean, it's a lot of work curating a community like that, because you get all kinds of people coming in. But a lot of very helpful people. Like, I do my best to respond to almost every question that there is in some context. It's very dynamic and very active. So
that's excellent. And so if someone wants to work with you one-on-one, obviously you work with epigenetics, peptides, all that with clients. You have a brand new website, right? So I'm going to include that as well. I checked that out. It's great. I love it. And so we'll include that as well. And so tell us just a teeny bit about the process if someone wants to work with you, kind of how that would all go, and how they would find you.
Yeah. So, I mean, the way to reach out to me is through my website, obviously, unless you come into the group, and then you can always private message me on Facebook. But the way that I take clients these days, for the most part, is either for 3 to 6 months, depending on their goals and that kind of thing. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be doing this. I do kind of 1 hour peptide consults, I call them, just to help orient people around peptides. And sometimes if they're dealing with something nothing's that simple. I will say this, but if they think they're dealing with something super simple and they really just want, like, how do I do it when my shoulder is sore, or whatever the case is, I'll do I'll help people develop basic protocols around peptides with like a 1 or 2 session package. But for the most part, the way that I like working with people is in a 3 to 6 month window, so that we can really take their health to the next level. Like, I'll give you an example. I have a guy who came to me for a 1 hour consult on peptides. He goes, "Oh, I've got the worst heartburn. I've had it for years." So, I give him the protocol, and, he calls me back after 3-4 weeks. He goes, "My heartburn's really bad and it's not gotten any better yet." Well, in talking to him, it comes out the guy's got ulcerative colitis, and he neglected to mention that.
Oh my gosh.
And I have an intake form. I'm like, do you have any medical conditions? And I'm like, well, of course your GERD isn't any better. Like your whole gut's inflamed. Like, to begin with, you're not using enough, and we can't fix UC in an hour.
Yeah, exactly.
If we can fix it at all. Like, this is a process. This is going to take time. So, so so people just need to kind of get their heads around. And I think this is why I do like a 15 to 20 minute free call with people before, we got to go on, at least have coffee before we commit to each other, right? Because
it's true.
we have
It
to be
is
on the same page.
Exactly. It's a commitment. You need to know the goals. And you're right. It takes at least 3 months for someone to make those positive changes or whatever the changes are that they want to do, to be in the right frame of mind, right? To get used to the protocols and all of that. So I think that's the key for sure. And if they want to make some really good changes, then 6 months or a year is more realistic. Right.
Sure.
We all want to have that magic wand. We could just go doop and everything changes and we're all happy, but that's not reality.
Find that magic wand. You let me know.
Yeah. If anybody finds it, let us know, because we would like to invest in one.
All over it. Yeah. And I have to say that, the hair tissue mineral analysis work that you do is something that's been on my radar for years. And I've resisted because I'm like, I can't go down that rabbit hole. But, having met you, I'm really excited about that, because I'm like, maybe I can just, maybe I'll just send them to Lisa. Because again, it's, like you're doing my test now. I mean, it's such a foundation issue in the body that if you don't balance those minerals, you don't identify if there's toxic metals or whatever the case, so much just won't work. As a matter of fact, even peptides won't work as well.
Well, and that's what I'm really interested in. I'm really interested in seeing that correlation between the minerals and the peptides, which is why I want to start biohacking with peptides, just to see what happens in the mineral system, what changes, what does it do? And I'm so excited to monitor and biohack all that. I can't wait. I'm that excited person going, oh my God, just give me the whole thing. I won't do that though, because I know that's not the right way to do it.
That's right.
Amazing. Well, that was such a great episode. So many things coming down the pipe for health. It is such an exciting time to be in this industry, and I'm so thankful. And thank you for being here with us today and sharing all of that amazing knowledge. And so I'll have all of Nathalie's contact information, her website, in all of our descriptions, as well as how to get into her Facebook group, and we'll include the MeWe as well. And so thanks for joining us today. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to my channel. We have a brand new episode here every 2 weeks. Give us a thumbs up. And if you're watching on your favorite podcast host, give us a like, leave us a comment, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to today's show. Head over to Pitel-Killah.com to gain access to some amazing free resources that will help you gain energy, erase debilitating symptoms, and be the best version of you. Remember to give this podcast a like and follow me on social media at Lisa Pitel-Killah. I'm here every 2 weeks with a brand new episode of the Human Optimization Podcast. Until next time.